This is an account of a combative on-camera exchange in which a single speaker moves rapidly between boasts, blunt reassurances, and sharp rebukes. A conversation that touches on war, nuclear weapons, oil, the stock market, and a string of historical comparisons. The speaker answers, interrupts, and repeats himself, alternately angry and almost boastful, and leaves a trail of claims that demand careful listening. He begins with an accusation aimed straight at the questioner. "You're such a disgrace." The remark is an immediate setting of tone, combative, dismissive, and meant to assert control over the frame of the conversation. The interviewer presses on, asking how long a campaign will last and whether extreme measures, including the use of nuclear weapons, are on the table. The speaker does not flinch. He frames the situation as already decisively handled. I took the American people, took the country out militarily in the first 4 weeks. I took it out militarily. That's C. Blame repeated and framed as a point of achievement drives much of what follows. We've hit 78% of the targets that we've wanted to hit, he says. We've knocked out their manufacturing. We've knocked out their missile production. We've knocked out their missile production. We've knocked out their drone production. We've knocked out everything. The language is categorical, percentages, inventory of military capabilities removed, an assertion of mere total dominance. In that recounting, he repeatedly emphasizes the speed and completeness of the campaign. I did that within that period of time that I mentioned, he insists. Later, he tallies again. We've hit about 75% of our targets. He acknowledges, at least in passing, that diplomacy is being given some room. Now, what we're doing is sitting back and seeing what deal. And if they don't want to make a deal, then I'll finish it up militarily with the other 25% of the targets. The calculus is laid bare. Diplomacy is useful only insofar as it delivers the outcome he demands. Chill, dash. If it fails, military force remains the fallback. When the interviewer points to the specter of nuclear weapons, the exchange tightens. The question, blunt, repetitive, is whether a nuclear weapon would be used. The speaker's response, delivered with irritation, is both a denial and a moral argument. We don't need it. Why do I need it? Why would a stupid question like that be asked? Why would I use a nuclear weapon when we've totally, in a very conventional way, decimated them without it? No, I wouldn't use it. A nuclear weapon should never be allowed to be used by anybody. Those sentences are central. They insist that the military objectives are being achieved without resort to nuclear arms, and they attach a moral categorical. Such weapons should never be allowed to be used by anybody. The speaker returns to that theme several times, insisting that preventing the other side from acquiring a nuclear bomb is the driving objective. You cannot give Iran a nuclear weapon. S is all about a nuclear weapon. They cannot have the nuclear bomb, and they're not going to have the nuclear bomb. Even as he disclaims any intention to use nuclear weapons, he frames the conflict in terms of existential danger. He asks the listener to imagine a nuclear weapon that's going to destroy the Middle East, including Israel, and warns of a nuclear holocaust in Europe if certain capabilities are not stopped. That framing elevates his stated goal, prevention of a nuclear-armed adversary, to the highest moral imperative. At moments, the rhetoric becomes personal and historical. He compares duration and effort across conflicts. Use a nuclear weapon against Iran, Vietnam. How many years was Vietnam? He asks rhetorically. He draws contrast meant to emphasize speed. We were 4.5, almost 5 years in World War II. We were in the Korean War for 7 years. I've been doing this for 6 weeks, and their military is totally defeated. The comparisons are meant to underline one claim, that this operation, at least in his telling, was swift and decisive. He also advances assertive claims about the decapitation of leadership. Their leaders are gone. The leaders are all gone. At times, he underscores the chaos he believes the campaign has sown within opposing ranks. They have all new leadership, and they're fighting like cats and dogs for who's going to control because we've created a real mess for them. Intermittently, the exchange collapses into blunt complaint about the press. He challenges the way the story is reported, calling parts of the media fake news and calling the questioner a disgrace more than once. That combative posture is part of the performance. Interruptions, scanned insults, and repeated references to what he calls the fake news narrative that, in his view, misreads the facts on the ground. He also invokes specific personal acts, a claim intended to mark his own role in the arc of U.S.-Iran relations. It was Soleimani who I killed, he declares. Soleimani loved the roadside bomb. He was an evil genius. That is a pointed personal claim. The speaker links himself to a high-profile dramatic act of force and then draws a line from that action to the present, arguing that the death of that commander was the beginning of it all, the catalyst for a broader collapse in his telling. The conversation turns to economics and energy. Hearing a question about how long Americans should expect higher gasoline costs, he responds, for a little while, and you know what they get for that? Iran without a nuclear weapon that's going to try and blow up one of our cities or blow up the entire Middle East. He ties temporary economic pain directly to the larger goal of preventing a nuclear armed adversary, arguing that short-term pain buys a long-term security dividend. He also makes a set of predictions he says he was right about: the trajectory of the stock market and oil prices, the stashed stock markets at an all-time high right now. He insists, repeating that he had forecast a significant drop connected to military action, but that the market instead remained strong. On oil, he once predicted prices might rise to maybe $200 a barrel. He frames the current reality as different from that projection, arguing that the United States is producing a lot of oil and that ships are coming from all over the world to Texas, Louisiana, and Alaska to get American oil. The picture he paints is one where market mechanics and U.S. production blunt what might otherwise be a catastrophic spike in energy costs. There is an intriguing line about the opposing side's oil infrastructure. They have a matter of days before that event takes place, so I'm not under any pressure whatsoever. So if you're asking for more time to sort out negotiations, I'm not asking you for more time, but if you need more time, I'm not asking anybody for more time. He suggests that the adversary is on a DEDD, add a line tied to physical constraints in their oil industry, a claim that amplifies pressure on the other side to accept terms. He adds a vivid image. Something happens underground that essentially renders it in very poor shape, and you never recover fully. You can recover 50–60%, but you can never have it like it is right now. That is an argument about irreversible damage intended to make concessions look increasingly necessary throughout the back and forth repetition functions as an instrument of persuasion. He returns to numbers and reach. We've hit about 75% of our targets, and repeats assertions of obliteration. They've been obliterated, Jeff. Obliterated. The repetition is at once a report and a psychological drumbeat. The listener should accept that the operation is successful and that the other side is on its heels. At the same time, he intermittently acknowledges uncertainty about the opposing leadership. We don't know who the leader is in Iran because, remember Reggie O? Me change. Many is gone. He's gone to greener pastures. He's gone, and all of his team is gone. Those lines are less crisp than his military boasts. They suggest either rapid leadership changes on the ground or a narrative of decapitation that is meant to amplify a sense of disorder. Later, he returns to the theme of succession and internal conflict. They're in turmoil. They're in turmoil. The speaker does not mince the political framing of earlier policy choices. He blames a predecessor for what he calls a faulty agreement, saying, "I ended the Obama horror show. The nuclear transaction that he made was horror. It gave him a road to the deal that he did, the Iran nuclear deal, was so bad, it gave him a road to a nuclear weapon." That is a political summation. The prior deal, in his view, created a pathway to a weapon and required his intervention to block it. At more than one point, the speaker returns to the fundamental justification for his actions, preventing new. Clear proliferation. This is all about a nuclear weapon. He repeats, you cannot let them have. I don't think it will happen. And again, mixing moral outrage and national security rhetoric, he tells the audience, I think there's nothing worse than a nuclear weapon that takes out one of your cities or two of your cities or three. The final act of this exchange is both defiant and self-assured. He resists being rushed. Don't rush me. Don't rush me, Jeff, he says to the questioner. He insists he has time, that the urgency is on the other side. You know who's under time pressure? They are. He wants to deliver a great deal, but one that, in his telling, secures the world from lunatics with nuclear weapons. He insists once more that the U.S. is not seeking escalation for its own sake. I don't want to rush it. I want to take my time. We have plenty of time, and I want to get a great deal. What emerges from this exchange is a tightly wound argument, decisive military action, ha. As to undercut the adversary's capabilities, diplomacy remains possible but is not required. Catastrophic weapons are unacceptable and will not be used by him. And short-term economic pain for Americans is an acceptable trade for what he presents as irreversible security gains. The rhetorical strategy is straightforward. Project strength, minimize the cost, frame the outcome as both inevitable and necessary. Yet the conversation also leaves open several questions. The repeated references to percentages, targets, and destroyed capability are presented as a kind of scoreboard, but they are not accompanied by verifiable detail in the moment. The claim of leadership all gone is categorical, and the repeated phrase obliterated admits no nuance. The speaker's insistence that nuclear weapons will not be used is direct and forceful, but his simultaneous invocation of existential danger, a nuclear holocaust in Europe, heightens the stakes and the emotional gravity of his rhetoric. Is in short, modern political theater, a performance of control and consequence delivered in blunt declarative sentences. It leans on personal action, on a belief in the power of decisive strikes, and on a moral frame that places nuclear nonproliferation at the center of the case he makes. It relies on repetition, on sharp dismissals of skeptical questioning, and on a willingness to trade short-term disruption for what he argues are long-term gains. As the exchange closes, he returns once more to self-justification and historical comparison, measuring weeks against years and treating swift force as a corrective to the long wars of the past. I've been doing this for 6 weeks, he says, and their military is totally defeated. He reiterates, almost like a refrain, that the objective is singular: prevent the acquisition of a nuclear bomb, and if diplomacy fails, complete the military mission. Take away the theatrical flourishes, and what remains is a policy posture presented as an accomplished fact: a campaign of strikes, a diplomatic window, threats of further military action, and a firm, repeated refusal to countenance nuclear use. The claimant frames all of these as both necessary and already largely carried out. How those assertions stand up under independent scrutiny is left to the record and to subsequent reporting, but in the moment they are offered as the contours of a completed operation and a continuing plan. The voice in this exchange is confident, combative, and unyielding. The moral argument that nothing could justify the spread of nuclear weapons serves as the anchor for the rest of the narrative. Whether the listener accepts that anchor depends on broader facts and independent verification. What is undeniable is the rhetorical power of the presentation, the blunt pronouncements, the repeated numbers, the personal claims of decisive action, and the stark framing of the alternative as catastrophe. As the speaker himself puts it in one unapologetic line, "I want to get a deal where our nation and the world is safe from lunatics with nuclear weapons." The sentence gives voice to the central claim of the entire exchange, that action up to and including force is justified by the goal of preventing a nuclear-armed adversary. The rest of the conversation is an extended performance in support of that claim, a mixture of bold assertions, pointed rebukes, and a steady insistence that his approach is both necessary and, in his telling, already successful.